Welcome to the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randle and Gus Kearns.
As Jay Wright was entering his fourth season as head coach of the Villanova Wildcats, he sat down to have breakfast with Dana O'Neill, who at the time was the beat writer for Villanova basketball. And he tells a story about how Dana O'Neill looks at him and says, "You know what I have to write about?" And he nods. Basically, the story is about how you can get fired at the end of this year. Gary Parrish summarized this story in a great article back on April 1st of 2016, where he documented Wright's incredible journey from the precipice of getting fired with a phone card scandal and suboptimal results in his first 3 years, NIT quarterfinal, NIT first round, NIT quarterfinal, to at the time the article was written, sitting just 2 wins away from his first national championship. Well, in that time, Jay Wright ended up winning the national title that year, winning another national title in 2017-2018, while winning every single Big East title from 2014 until now, except for one in 2018, which was one of the years he won the NCAA title. And there are so many coaches that have a similar story where they go from possibly being fired or coming from another school to massive success. It happens all over sports. Here in New York, Joe Torre, when hired by the Yankees, was put under a headline, Clueless Joe, and he just went on to win multiple championships with the Yankees. So Jay Wright's story is really incredible, and he has taken the Villanova Wildcats, with roughly 7,000 undergrads, little Catholic school outside of Philadelphia, to the point now where they are among the elite programs in the country, with Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina, Gonzaga, etc. And so as we continue our Screen the Screener season review series, we have to talk about the Villanova Wildcats, and who better to talk about it than Joe Juliano, longtime writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer, tremendous follow, knows the program inside and out, can give you history, chapter, verse, everything about Villanova basketball. Joe's going to join us today to recap the season, which was another Big East championship, a season that ended with 7 of 8 wins for Villanova. And sure, we'll never know because of COVID-19 how they would have done in the tournament, but certainly it projected like this was another possible Final Four season. He'll talk about next year, with most of the players returning. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl recently announced today, in fact, that he's going to return. So they're just waiting on Saddiq Bey, he of the best small forward in the country, Julius Erving Award winner. Joe will also talk about why Jay Wright doesn't really need a ton of recruits next year because he has so much talent returning, but how he's building another strong class in 2021. So our season review series rolls on with the Villanova Wildcats and Jay Wright, a man who was thought to be an empty suit when he started at Villanova, to now, where he's a 2-time Naismith College Coach of the Year, 6-time Big East Coach of the Year, AP Coach of the Decade, 2 national championship winning coach who will be a Hall of Famer, absolutely, when all is said and done. So let's bring in Joe Juliano. Please follow him on Twitter at JoeJulesINQ and talk Villanova Wildcats basketball. The Screen the Screener season review series rolls on here with the Villanova Wildcats. Villanova has been the preeminent program in college basketball for the last 5 years. Incredible success under Jay Wright, 2 national titles, and right now by many publications, depending on who comes back, the preseason number 1 team next year heading into the college basketball season. So we bring on Joe Juliano from the Philadelphia Inquirer, does an outstanding job, covers Villanova basketball for the Philadelphia Inquirer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoeJulesINQ. He's joined us before. He's back today to give us a little bit of a review of the year and a preview for next year for Villanova. So, Joe, thanks so much for joining us. How you doing? Are you staying safe?
Hey, I am. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Well, listen, coming into this year, I mean, what Jay Wright has done with this program has been outstanding. I remember going to high school basketball clinics, hearing Jay Wright talk when there were rumors long time ago. Is he going to succeed at Villanova? Is he the right fit? Obviously, those have been put to rest here and put to bed, but another dominant season for the Wildcats in the Big East. My question to you is, coming into this year, where did you have them? Where did you see them? Top 10 team, top 5 team? What did you think coming into this year, given their incredible recent success?
Yeah, I think I voted them 12th or 13th in the preseason AP poll, and I had them winning the Big East in the preseason by a hair over Seton Hall. As it turned out, Seton Hall beat out Villanova by 1 point in the coaches' voting to finish, in the prediction to finish number one. But, my thought was, Villanova is the champ, and they're the champ until dethroned. It was an interesting season, no doubt, but, to finish 13-5 and still grab a share of the Big East championship gives you an idea how tough the Big East was this year. A lot of great teams, and, at least 6 or 7 would have made the NCAA tournament if we had one, but we will never know. But, the beginning of the year, losing Phil Booth and Eric Paschal, 2 great seniors, 2 big-time leaders on the team. And the thing about Jay Wright is that he really leans on his seniors a lot, and I mean a lot. They have to really carry about as much of the load as the coaches do, pretty much. They're offered a lot of responsibility. And coming into this year, there were no seniors. In fact, the juniors that they had, Colin Gillespie, Jermaine Samuels, and Demir Cosby-Roundtree, were third-year juniors. Usually when they have a junior like a Mikal Bridges or somebody like that, a kid who redshirted, Dante DiVincenzo was on the path as a redshirt, even though he left after his redshirt sophomore year. But it just didn't work out for Jay. Jay had, the roster construction all lined up. Dante DiVincenzo was supposed to be a senior this year and left early. Omari Spellman was supposed to be in that area, left early. So it was tough for Jay, and having a young team and 3 juniors as leaders really looked like a bit of an uphill battle. You didn't think they were going to be any worse than last year when they were 24-10, and this year 24-7. I really didn't see them losing 10, but it was going to be a tough year nonetheless.
So in the non-conference beginning of the year, listen, we always know Villanova is going to be one of the best teams in the country. That's what Jay Wright has built. That's where Villanova basketball is right now. But I will tell you that the game that really said, you know what, here we go again, was that Kansas game on December 21st. So they start off 9-2 in the non-conference, had the loss to Baylor in a neutral court. No shame there, of course. Ohio State, who was on fire earlier in the year with the big win at home against Nova there, the second game. But outside of that, took care of business against Mississippi State, Delaware, who was pretty good. And then that Kansas game. I think to me that showed me something. That was a great win at home, 56-55 over what I think at the end of this year, Joe, was the best team in the country.
Yeah, I agree with there, Mike. I really do think Kansas was the best team at the end of the year. But that Kansas-Villanova game was just a prime example that even though Villanova probably didn't have the experience that was needed to have an easy time against Kansas, not that Kansas is easy in any circumstance, but the fact that they won that game really shows how much everybody bought in to the philosophy of grinding out a victory. I mean, you could have kids at a big-time university, 5-star, 4-star kids, highly recruited kids, come in and really not have that mental fortitude to survive in a game that just went excruciatingly, painfully, possession by possession. A couple possessions that were empty, or a defensive stop, or a turnover, or something like that. And even at the end of the game, Villanova having trouble trying to inbound the ball since Kansas had so many fouls to give. They kept fouling.
Yes.
Villanova had to keep inbounding the ball, and Jay Wright said after the game, I said, we ran out of plays. He said we had no more plays left. We had to run the same ones that they had seen over again. But just the fact that they grinded out that victory with a young team like that really showed you something about the Jay Wright culture and how these kids had bought into it.
And then you get into the regular season in the Big East. Again, 3-way tie for the Big East title this year with Creighton, of course, and, Seton Hall as well, with the big rivalry with Seton Hall. But when you get into the regular season there, a couple games stood out to me. I got to see a lot of them. Obviously, we're based in New Jersey. The Providence game away, because Providence there on Saturday, January 25th, they were playing very well at home. Here comes Villanova off the win against Butler. Butler's always a tough game, right? And then they go in and they win away at Providence. Gillespie, the whole group played very well there. Saddiq Bey, everyone. That was another point to me that, man, this team, because, you want to do three things as a team, Joe. You want to beat the teams you're supposed to beat. You want to win at home. And then you got to beat some teams that maybe you're not expected to beat on the road. And at that time against Providence, that was a game that many people picked Providence, your point spread, all that stuff. I thought that was also a big sort of watershed mark for this team.
Yeah, I agree. I thought Providence was a big one. And I'll give you one other one, Mike. The Creighton game at Creighton.
Yes. Yep.
Which was the first Tuesday in January. Yep. I mean, Creighton, I don't remember how many possessions there were in the game, but Creighton won most of them. But the ones that Villanova had to win to steal the game from Creighton, they converted. Saddiq Bey made a big three. Colin Gillespie made a bunch of free throws. And they stopped, some of Creighton's big guns, Ballack, Alexander, Zagorowski. They really struggled. So, the fact that Villanova won that game, I mean, they went into the bus back to the airport, and I think the Nebraska Highway Patrol might have been following them because they really stole that victory. And the same with Providence. I mean, when you go to Providence, and same with Creighton, I mean, same anywhere in the Big East when you're on the road. It's a sellout crowd. It's Villanova. Villanova wears the big target on their backs. They are the class of the Big East for, what's this now, six straight years?
Yep. Joe, since 2014, they've won the Big East every year except for that 2018 year where they were one game behind Xavier. They've won it every year since 2014.
Right, and the year they didn't win it, they still won the national championship.
Right, exactly.
Really. They won the national championship that year, and the only year in the last few that they hadn't won the Big East tournament, they lost to Seton Hall. They won the national championship that year as well. So but my point is, you go into a hostile arena. It could be Creighton. It could be Seton Hall. It could be Xavier. It could be Providence, as we were talking about. I mean, these people are out for blood. They want their team to beat Villanova. They want to have a court storming, and let's go. Let's show people that we're proud of our team for knocking off the number one team in the league. And against Providence, they had a problem this year. Providence did, at least early in the season when they were struggling. They had trouble scoring. They could defend, they could rebound, but they couldn't put the ball in the basket. And Villanova was able to beat them on that day at the dunk just by playing defense well enough where they didn't play outstanding defense that game. Providence missed some real easy ones, especially in the rally late in the game where they were trying to come back from the deficit. But it was, quite a win for Villanova. I mean, it's funny, though. They won some really neat games on the road at Creighton, at St. John's, at Seton Hall late in the season, at Providence, but they lost at the Wells Fargo Center to Providence, Creighton, and Seton Hall. So, you figure it out. I can't.
Yeah, a great point, too, about the Creighton game. Gillespie had 24 there. And I always felt like you knew Villanova was locked in when they can impose their will. Their defense, if you look at Ken Pom, 15th in adjusted offensive efficiency, 36th in defensive efficiency. And all the teams that win the national title usually are well represented on both sides. They held Creighton to 59 points in Creighton. I mean, that's never done. And they were able to sort of put their will in on the game in those big moments. I'm curious, though. Every team goes through it. I've talked about last year, both Texas Tech and Auburn had 3-game losing streaks. Both made the Final Four. They almost both made the final game if it wasn't for Kyle Guy making 3 free throws and that crazy ending.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But Villanova had that streak there in the middle. Lost to Creighton at home, lost to Butler away, and then Seton Hall. How was the team and your mindset at that point? Was it like, listen, this is just a streak we're going through? Or was there any concern there at that time?
Well, it's funny. I mean, when you lose to Creighton, Creighton has just such an efficient offense that if Creighton plays any defense at all, they pretty much have you beat. And they play defense in that game. So I don't think, I think Jay was a little annoyed with the offensive execution in that game. Against Butler, I mean, the Butler game was just a phenomenal game.
Yep.
It was basically a last team with the ball wins, yep. And Butler had the ball last, and Kamar Baldwin hit a step back three that you knew was going in. I mean, they guarded him about as tightly as they could, but Gillespie had just one false step and had enough separation, which wasn't a heck of a lot to begin with, and Baldwin knocked down the shot. And then they play Seton Hall back at the Wells Fargo Center, and Seton Hall played a great game. I mean, you're always looking out for Miles Powell, and he had a good game, not a great game. But the rest of the team, Quincy McKnight was a real star in that game. So, you have nights like this, but when you lose 3 in a row in the Big East, you're really, well, I know their fans are concerned that things might really be sliding downhill. But Villanova has that kind of confidence where, they basically go next game. They play a game, they watch the film, and they look ahead to the next game. There's really not a lot of dwelling on what happened. I mean, obviously you want to correct the mistakes that you made, but other than that, they really have real good focus. And again, it's the Jay Wright culture. It's the kind of kids he brings in that, you don't dwell on what on the bad stuff that happened. You just look ahead and you play your game and then see where it takes you.
Yeah, and it took them to a great ending to the year, winning 7 of their last 8 games, including the 2 road games at Seton Hall, at Georgetown, to give themselves a share of that Big East title. Well, if you look, Joe, at all the early season, way too early top 25 rankings, Villanova is right near the top, if not at the top in all of them. And today they got huge news that Jeremiah Robinson-Earl is coming back. So talk a little bit about that. I mean, 5-star prospect here coming back. I mean, we're still waiting on Saddiq Bey, of course, but the cupboard is stocked for Villanova next year before we even talk about the recruits.
Oh yeah, it absolutely is. There's, but getting Jeremiah Robinson-Earl back is really big. I mean, the kid is a terrific player at both ends of the court. Great defensive player, great rebounder. Gives him enough offense. He struggled with his outside shot a little bit, but I'm sure with work he can bring that back for next season. But the fact that they get him back is a big addition for them. I mean, I don't think many of us thought he was going to come back, that he was going to give the draft a try. But in this strange and crazy world that we live in right now, we still don't have a date for the combine. There's not going to be any, kids can't travel to play or to work out or to do anything at this time. And when the NBA gets started, who knows? If they want to resume their season, that'll set the draft back until, late summer, maybe even early fall. I know that doesn't sound fair, but that's the world we're living in right now. And as for Saddiq Bey, I mean, I think he wants to give it a shot. I mean, the mock drafts that I see have him on the cusp of being a lottery pick. Maybe some drafts might have him, two spots short of a lottery pick. But with Bey and the season he had, the improvement he made during the season, and what he can show scouts if and when he ever gets the chance to do so, I think could get him into that area of a lottery pick. So I'm thinking, as of now, that Saddiq Bey will be the only guy who goes. And like you said, with Jeremiah Robinson-Earl back and the rest of their rotation, they should be in pretty good shape.
Bey is an interesting prospect because 8 points last year. And to me, Joe, as just a fan, someone who doesn't know the team anywhere near as well as you do, he was just a spot-up shooter. He was sort of like a guy who had to develop. And this year just really doubled his points per game to 16, 45% from three-point range. He won the Julius Erving Award for the top small forward in the country, beating out some pretty stiff competition. I mean, really just a remarkable transformation over the last year. He became a real top player. If he, by some way, comes back, I mean, you're looking at a preseason first-team All-American type player.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No question about it. And the thing about Saddiq, and the thing that Jay Wright loves about him, is that he just keeps working. He's never really happy with his performance, no matter how many points he scores or how many shots he makes or how many assists he has or anything like that, or playing sometimes or most of the time the top scorer on the other team. So getting him back would be a big advantage for Villanova, although their rotation is pretty tight now, and if nobody leaves, the guys in the back are really going to be trying to compete for playing time.
So, Joe, with such a deep bench, I mean, they have talent across the board. The question is Bey coming back? Is he not? It puts an interesting spin on recruiting. I've talked to many different programs, Indiana, Kentucky, all the beat writers across the country, and they pretty much have a player or two, a 5-star, 4-star recruit that they're looking at for an immediate impact. But what are you hearing? I know Jalen Green now is down to Texas Tech, and one other school he's eliminated Nova probably because of the amount of talent on the team. But William Jeffress, maybe we're hearing Pittsburgh, things like that. What are you hearing about the players coming in? And is that even necessary next year for Villanova, given what they have coming back?
Well, Jay Wright's never been someone to make sure all his scholarships are taken. I mean, if he goes into a season with 11, he's perfectly fine. And we had him on a conference call a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about like his incoming freshmen. One of his incoming freshmen could be Brian Antoine, who only played 16 games this year while returning from really major shoulder surgery. So Brian Antoine will be in the mix for a starting job, but since he didn't play much this year, you can consider him a freshman, although officially he will be a sophomore.
Good point. Yep.
Then you have another guy, a transfer from Tulane, Caleb Daniels, who had to sit out this year as under the transfer rule. He's coming in and he's going to be trying for some playing time. And then the real X factor and the guy that they were looking at had Jeremiah Robinson-Earl left, which he's not leaving now. But they have a 6'9" kid, local kid by the name of Eric Dixon.
Yep.
Dixon was the Pennsylvania Player of the Year last season, and he came in this year a little heavy, and Jay wanted to make sure he had a full year of development under his belt, so he decided to redshirt him. And he'll be coming in next year as a freshman, as a redshirt freshman, but a guy who hasn't played yet. So you have these guys who are new to the program, plus Ryan Arcidiacono's kid brother, Chris Arcidiacono, who probably has a little more in the tank than he was able to show last year. Again, another year of development under Jay Wright, and how that's been with guys like Eric Pascal and Dante DiVincenzo and Mikal Bridges, guys who sit out years and then come back playing intercollegiate basketball and excelling. So, you maybe can see that happening next year with Antoine, with Eric Dixon, with Caleb Daniels, with Chris Arcidiacono. So there'll be plenty of competition for spots. And Jay's whole point was that it's the 2021 class, I think, that he's really focused on, because they will lose Jermaine Samuels, Colin Gillespie, and Demir Cosby-Roundtree after next season, and possibly Jeremiah Robinson-Earl as well. So 2021 is a big recruiting season for them. If they can get somebody in 20, I don't think Jay will turn them down, but I think they're focused ahead 1 year when it comes to high school kids.
Yeah, and they've already got a lot of really warm commits here. Trey Patterson from New Jersey, number 2 in the state. Trevor Keels, 5-star out in Virginia. He's number 1 in the state. So it looks like they are going to be reloading, Joe. That's for sure. The Villanova Wildcats going to be at the top of everyone's list next year for college basketball. And even though this year was cut short, it looks like they'll have a strong team back again next year. Folks, Joe Juliano does an amazing job for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Those guys are outstanding. Even lost in this COVID situation is the work that our reporters and journalists are doing right now, covering everything. And Joe is at the top of the list. Got to follow him on Twitter at JoeJulesINQ. Joe, thanks for a few minutes. We'll hopefully have a college basketball season next year, and we'll have you back to preview it, because Villanova, the 3-and-D guys, the smart point guard, Jay Wright, the great suits, everything. Villanova basketball is at the top of college basketball, and they're going to continue that next year for sure.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Mike. I really appreciate it. Pleasure being with you, and stay safe.
I'm addicted to the appetite. It's a